we had completed the German second combat phase, and that was actually relatively or quite successful compared to the first one. There was a complete destruction of the Soviet units there. I think one was retreated onto here, or maybe possibly not. I'll have to check on that. There was also success on this front to a point. So the Soviets took a few losses. There was a sort of a neutralization here. The Germans retreated, the Soviets retreated. I think they took a loss. The Germans certainly retreated though. The combat results table. I'll just show you though. So it's a 2d6 dice type table. So with a bell curve, because it's got a distribution up to 12. And what it allows for is basically retreats or step losses. So the in many cases you'll get a double retreat though. You'll get both sides retreating. Now, if a unit doesn't want to retreat, it can take a loss and then advance after combat, so to speak. That's if it's an AR, an attack or retreat situation. If the defender doesn't want to retreat, it just takes a step loss and stays in position. But where there's an asterisk, the unit has to take at least one step loss to satisfy that result. So a 2 asterisk means that all those units need to take at least one step loss and retreat 1, or they could actually take 2 step losses and stay in place. So that's how that works. So there's been a degree of success. Now it's going to be the German mechanized movement phase after this, so I'll stop this now and report after that. So we have now completed the German second mechanized movement phase, and really exploiting the in a couple of spots the success the Germans had in the first in the second combat phase. So here there was this spoiling attack out here immediately to the east of the Oral Bulge, which was successful and actually eliminated the defending units. So these 2 understrength German divisions are attempting a loop, a pincer movement. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but anyway, the idea is to destabilize this Russian front here. Well, they can always pull back and start attacking north. There are a number of Russian reinforcements though that come in on turn 3. It's about eight units, so these will have to be careful about that. Here we've got a degree of infiltration that's happened, or really just pushing this rather weaker unit back. I think it lost one unit that was defending with it, but it can be reinforced with these units here. So, or at least this one. I'm not sure if it's got the movement allowance to make it back there. It probably hasn't. So that would be 1, and the Russians to leave a zone of control is 2. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No, so they wouldn't actually have the movement allowance because it's 3 to enter a zone of control for the Russians. It's 2 and 1 for the Germans, respectively. And that's from the optional rules that were developed for the original Kursk 1971 game. So I think that's a reasonable thing too. Here the Germans have just moved into these, again, just moved forward slightly. So some of these units are going to be in a much better position to attack. This coming movement phase, they won't have anywhere to retreat to anyway. Likewise here, this unit's pulled out from this position. It can't infiltrate because you can't move from zone of control to zone of control in a fortification zone. Other than that, the fortification zone is add 2 to the movement point allowance. This is probably the more interesting one, where we've got this rather large panzer force that's attacking, and then can actually make it to Kursk unless the Russians manage to think up some sort of way of stopping them. I'll come to that when the time comes, which is very shortly. And here they were repulsed, the Germans, so were the Russians, so there's a bit of a gap that opened up. Not a gap so much as just they were pushed back slightly. one of the German divisions has reoccupied that, and the other two are left in reserve to see where the how the Russians position themselves. Because once committed to something, it's hard to pull out simply because of the movement point allowance. So the next movement, well, the next phase will be the Russian movement phase, turn 2. I'll come back to you on that. We now have the completion of the Soviet second movement and mechanised movement phase. There were no attacks by the Soviet player. It's a fairly audacious situation the Soviets tried to create, simply because it's looking a little bit risky for the Soviet player. So we've done a sort of enveloping movement of this German contingent here, as we've done one here. So these Germans are out of supply for movement purposes, as are these, and so is this one here actually. So they're all out of supply, and we'll just see how it works out. There are Soviet reserves about to appear on turn 3, not many, and we'll just see how that works out. It's looking difficult though for the Soviet player, simply because he hasn't got attacking power, and we'll soon find out what the German is up to in turn 3.